Hello everyone, welcome back again to my channel, Yam Heam Educamix TV 25. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. So now we're going to tackle about the coming of Spain in the Philippines. In the 16th century, the Philippines was invaded by the Spaniards. They made our country into a colony of Spain. A colony is a country that is ruled by foreigners from another land. The coming of the Spaniards changed our history. Through Spain, we became Catholic in religion. We also got a new and more advanced culture from Europe and Mexico. But for the first time in our history, we lost our freedom and independence to foreigners. It took more than 300 years before we could have our freedom back again. Why the Spaniards came? So there are reasons why the Spaniards came to the Philippines and Asia. They have the 3G reasons. First is God. The first aim of Spain was to spread the Roman Catholic religion. At the time, Spain was the greatest champion of Catholicism in the world. The Spanish king spent a large amount of money to convert more people to Catholicism. Second reason is gold. The second aim of Spain was to get rich. They wanted to control the spice trade in Asia because spices were very much in demand in Europe. If Spain could control the spice trade, they would be the richest nation in the world. But they did not succeed in this aim. The third aim of Spain was to get political glory. When Spain conquered the Philippines in Asia, it became the greatest empire in the world during the 16th century. Philip II was the first king to boast that the sun never set on his kingdom, because when it was sunset in Manila, it was also sunrise in Madrid, Spain. Magellan's Voyage. The coming of Magellan to the Philippines was not an accident. He really planned and wanted to find the Philippines because he heard that it was a very rich land. So Ferdinand Magellan, a Portuguese explorer, asked the Portuguese king, King Manuel, to finance a project to sail to the Philippines. But the Portuguese king only laughed at Magellan and told him to go away. Magellan traveled to the next country, which is Spain, and talked to the king and queen of Spain to support his expedition to Asia. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel of Spain, who ruled jointly, became interested because Magellan said he could find a new route to the east by sailing through a secret passage in the west. At that time, the rich lands of Asia were close to Spain. The king and queen ordered an expedition to accompany the brave Magellan on his historic voyage. Magellan's expedition was consisted of 5 ships and 265 men. The 5 ships were named as Trinidad, Concepcion, Santiago the Smallest, San Antonio, and Victoria. The expedition of Magellan left Spain for the east on September 20, 1519. They started their voyage in Sanlúcar de Barrameda. From there, they sailed westward across the Atlantic Ocean down to the tip of South America. The fleet sailed through familiar waters along the west coast of Africa. They reached the Canaries on September 26. Crossing the Atlantic, they landed on the South American coast, now Pernambuco, Brazil, on November 29. Magellan continued the voyage, reaching Rio de Janeiro on December 13. Magellan named the place as Santa Lucia because he landed there on the Saints' Feast Day. They traded with the Native Americans for provisions. The voyage continued at Rio de Plata. By the time they were at the tip of the South American continent, it was already winter. They encountered snowstorms. The men became apprehensive and asked Magellan that they all return to Spain, but Magellan declined. Instead, he asked them to take courage. The ships took shelter from storms in Port San Julian, now in Argentina, in March 1520. Unknown to Magellan, some officers took into command the maneuvering of 3 ships, the San Antonio, the Concepcion, and the Victoria. The next day, Gaspar de Quesada, captain of the Concepcion, wrote to Magellan that he and others would not recognize his authority unless they returned immediately to Spain. Still, Magellan refused to heed their petition. Sina Juan de Cartagena, Antonio de Coca, Juan Sebastian del Cano, called Il Cano, and Gaspar de Quesada were found guilty of treason but pardoned. But Cartagena continued to plot again, this time with one of the priests, Pedro Sanchez de Reina. They were probably jealous because the Captain General of the Spanish expedition was a Portuguese. Magellan had the 2 left off the coast of an unnamed island. First signs of spring, the exploratory voyage continued in the search of a route to the Southern Sea, now Pacific Ocean. Strong typhoon had driven ashore and destroyed the smallest ship, Santiago. Nang dahil dito, 4 na lamang ang natira sa mga barkong pinamumunuan ni Magellan. In August, the 4 ships went further south and eventually, they came upon a strait which Magellan called Strait of All Saints, now Strait of Magellan. Magellan sent to San Antonio to explore the southeast opening of the strait, and Trinidad entered the southwest. Secretly, San Antonio, piloted by Esteban Gomez, a Portuguese, deserted on the night of November 20 and sailed back to Spain. Dahil bumalik ng Espanya ang San Antonio, ay 3 na lamang ang natira sa pinamumunuang barko ni Magellan. The fleet reached the Southern Sea, which Magellan named Ocean Pacific because it was calm. Unfortunately, Magellan had underestimated the ocean's size. In the next 5 months, the ship was running out of supplies. Instead of biscuits, the men ate sawdust. They are also started to eat leather rope guards and even rats. Many got sick with scurvy or a gum disease. Dahil sa gutom at sa mga sakit na nakuha nila sa kanilang kinakain, marami sa mga tauhan ni Magellan ang namatay. Ganun pa man, Magellan and his men bravely sailed on, and by March 6, 1521, they had reached an island in the western Pacific. He called it his Islas Ladrones or Islands of Thieves, later to be named Marianas in honor of Maria Ana of Austria, Queen Regent of Spain, because some of the native Chamorros had stolen a boat from the flagship. To stop them, Magellan ordered his men to fire their guns. From Ladrones Islands, Magellan's fleet went on their journey westward. At the dawn of Saturday, on March 16, 1521, they saw the towering heights of Samar and named the island Islas de San Lazaro, for it was the feast day of Saint Lazarus. This date is celebrated as the European discovery of the international date line. After seeing Samar, the Spaniards landed at the island of Homonon in Leyte Gulf on March 17. Here, they saw their first Filipinos who brought them food. Magellan and his men had been starving until then. From Homonon, they were driven by storm to Masaubutuan in Agusan del Norte, reaching it on March 28. There, they found a rich Filipino kingdom with plenty of food, gold, forests, rice fields, and mountains. At Butuan, Raha Kulambu and Raha Siago met Magellan. In the finest tradition of Filipino hospitality, they welcomed the Spaniards. The foreign visitors were generously fed with lots of rice, chickens, pigs, and fruits, all served on the finest Chinese porcelain. To seal their new friendship, Kulambo and Magellan made a traditional blood compact known as sandugo. Each man made a small cut on his left arm and let his blood drip into a glass of wine. Then they crossed arms and took a sip of the cup with the blood of the other. It was the local custom of becoming friendship then. This was the first blood compact by a Filipino with a white man. Another important event was the first Mass held on the shore on Masaubutuan on Easter morning, March 31, 1521, by Father Pedro de Valderrama, the Spanish chaplain. The Filipino kings and their men attended the mass along with Magellan and his men. After the mass, the Filipinos were treated to a fencing exhibition by the Spaniards. Then, at sunset of the same day, Magellan planted a huge wooden cross on the top of a hill overlooking the sea. The Filipinos did not know what Magellan was doing. In fact, when he planted the cross, it was like planting a different flag on our land. Magellan claimed our country for the King of Spain. In short, Magellan wanted to make the Philippines a colony of Spain. The Spaniards go to Cebu. The Spaniards continued their voyage by going to Cebu. King Colombo guided them there. They arrived at Cebu on Sunday, April 7, 1521. At first, the king of Cebu, Humabon, refused to meet Magellan or let him land. But his friend King Colombo persuaded him that the white men came as friends. So the Spaniards were allowed to land and become the guests of the Cebuanos. The wealth and culture of the Cebuanos impressed the Spaniards very much. Cebu was a booming town. It had trade relations with China, Thailand, the Moluccas, and other barangays of the Philippines. The Spaniards were treated well here. King Humabon and Magellan made a blood compact as a sign of their friendship. On April 14, 1521, a mass was held on the shore. Then Magellan placed a cross which still stands at Cebu City today. After the mass, Cebuanos are invited to convert to Christianity. More than 800 Cebuanos, including Humabon, his wife, and his son, agreed to be baptized. They became the first Filipino Catholics. The queen was baptized as Queen Juana. She was given a beautiful image of the child Jesus or Santo Niño, which is still the patron saint of Cebu City until today. Later, a miraculous cure of the king's brother astonished the Cebuanos. Thus, thousands more were baptized as Catholics. Magellan wanted all Filipino kings in Cebu and nearby islands to surrender to Spain. But there was one brave Filipino ruler who defied him. He was King Lapu-Lapu of Mactan, a little island near Cebu. One day, the other king of Mactan called Sula asked Magellan for help in destroying Lapu-Lapu. The two kings in Mactan were bitter enemies. Magellan agreed to help Sula for he also wanted to kill Lapu-Lapu. At dawn of April 27, 1521, Magellan invaded Mactan. Magellan boasted to the Cebuanos that he did not need their help in fighting Lapu-Lapu. He told them to stay in their boats and watch the Spaniards beat Lapu-Lapu's men. So, with only 60 men, Magellan attacked Lapu-Lapu's kingdom. The battle was short but very bloody. Fighting for their land and liberty, Lapu-Lapu and his warriors fought like lions. Magellan and his men were beaten in this battle. So Magellan ordered his men to retreat to their boats. He himself was wounded in the arm, leg, and face. As the Spaniards were retreating, Lapu-Lapu's men surrounded Magellan and killed him. The Spaniards were defeated in this battle. Truly, Lapu-Lapu of Mactan was the first Filipino hero. It was the first battle between the Filipinos and the white men, and it was the first victory of the Filipinos. Lapu-Lapu defended the freedom of the Philippines. He deserves to live forever in the pages of our history. In his honor, Lapu-Lapu City in Mactan was named after him. After their defeat at Mactan, the Spaniards returned sadly to Cebu. Nang bumalik na sila ng Cebu, nawala na ang respeto ng mga Cebuanos sa mga Espanyol kasi nga umaasa sila na sila ang makakatulong para matalo nila si Lapu-Lapu. The Cebuanos were really disappointed with the Spaniards. The Spaniards also became abusive. Duarte Barbosa, one of the new commanders, maltreated Enrique, Magellan's Malay slave. So Enrique plotted with King Humabon to kill the Spaniards. On May 1, 1521, the Spaniards were invited to a feast day by King Humabon. While they were eating and drinking at the feast, the Spaniards were attacked by the Cebuanos. Many Europeans were killed, including Duarte Barbosa and Juan Serrano, the new commanders. The remaining members of the expedition were forced to flee the islands before the Cebuanos could kill them all. They burned the ship Concepcion for lack of men to operate the vessel. With 2 ships left, Trinidad and Victoria, they continued their voyage to Moluccas. On November 8, 1521, they finally landed in Tidore, an island in Moluccas. They were able to secure a rich cargo of spices. The survivors decided that the Trinidad, led by Gomez de Espinosa, would sail back to Spain by crossing the Pacific to Panama, while the Victoria, under Juan Sebastian Delcano's command, would sail via Cape of Good Hope but on lower latitudes to avoid the Portuguese. The Trinidad sailed for Mexico, was caught by the Portuguese in the Moluccas. The other ship, the Victoria, sailed for Spain via the Indian Ocean in the African Cape, reached Sanlúcar, Spain on September 6, 1522 with only 18 survivors. The voyage around the world lasted 2 years, 11 months, and 16 days. As for the crew of the San Antonio, the ship that had deserted the expedition, they had been imprisoned until Elcano's return. They were tried and convicted. The voyage enhanced their knowledge about the existence of other islands in the Pacific and the Philippines. It also confirmed that the Earth is round and that it is really possible to sail around the world since the world's oceans are connected. The cargo of spices brought by Elcano was sold for such a high price that it was more than enough to pay for the expenses of Magellan's expedition. As a reward, the Spanish crown granted Elcano a proud motto for his shield, Primus circumdidiste me, or you circumnavigated me first. Victoria was the first ship to sail around the world. But who was the first man to go around the world? 3 candidates for this honor are: first is Enrique. Enrique is the Filipino slave of Magellan. He was a Cebuano. Magellan bought him in the Malacca slave market. He was a good servant and became a Catholic. When Magellan went to the Philippines, Enrique acted as interpreter of the expedition. After Magellan died and his men went back to Spain, he remained in Cebu. Some historians say Enrique was the first man to go around the world because he came home when Magellan landed in the Philippines. Second is Ferdinand Magellan, the Portuguese explorer who planned and led the expedition that sailed around the world. Magellan was in the East before as a Portuguese soldier in Malacca in 1505 to 1513. Because he was killed by Lapu-Lapu's men in Bactan, he did not return to Spain with his men, but some historians say he was the first man around the world. Third is Juan Sebastian Delcano, the Spanish ship captain who brought the Victoria and her survivors back to Spain. He was on Magellan's voyage from start to finish. Although he was one of the mutineers at Port Julian, Magellan pardoned him. After Magellan and other leaders died, Elcano led the survivors back to Spain. The Spanish king gave him the honor which should have gone to Magellan. Elcano got an annual pension in a coat of arms with a picture of the globe saying Preme circumdidiste me, or fares to sail around me. So some historians say he was the first man to go around the world. Magellan's expedition was the greatest sea exploit of all time because of 3 reasons. First, it was the first voyage around the world by sea. It proved that the earth was not flat and ships would not fall off when they got to the end of the world. Second, it added to the knowledge about geography. The Europeans learned that the Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean. The Strait of Magellan in South America was discovered. The Europeans also discovered the Philippines and other new lands in Asia. Magellan blazed the trail for a new westward route to the fabulous riches of Asia. Third, it made Spain interested in colonizing the Philippines. So that's the result of Magellan's voyage. So dyan po nagtatapos ang Magellan's expedition. So I'm your teacher May na nag-iwan ng mga katagang you can learn something new every day if you listen. So abangan po natin ang susunod na mga kabanata. Thank you so much!